Most people think that discipline is about punishment, rules, or consequences, and that's why it never sticks. Discipline doesn't fail because people are lazy, it fails because belief was never defined. Discipline doesn't mean punishment, it means to be taught or to learn or to develop a way of doing things. And here's the problem. Discipline is the one trait that experts say that you need in order to succeed at anything. Yet almost not any of them, no one can explain what it actually is or how it works and why it collapses under pressure. And that is what we're going to fix. Without discipline, every other character trait falls apart. And without character, performance is going to fail. Welcome to Foundations of Character. I am Scott Wilkinson. For over 30 years, I have used martial arts as a tool to teach character, mainly to kids. What I've learned is simple. When character is trained correctly, performance is automatic. It just takes care of itself. Now I need to rewind for a second because earlier I said discipline doesn't fail because people are lazy. It fails because belief was never defined. That was not a throwaway line. That was the foundation for this entire video. Because if discipline is built on belief, then before we talk about discipline, we have to understand belief. And here's how I think about it. In a perfect world, a belief is defined as a statement that you've thought about deeply and concluded it's both true and beneficial. Think about a statement as a tabletop. Your brain is constantly scanning your thoughts, action, and behavior, and every time you act in a way that supports that statement, your brain adds another leg to the table. The more legs it has, the more stable it becomes. Eventually, the table has so many legs, there's no chance it's ever going to fall over. At that point, the brain just stops questioning the statements and it treats it as settled truth. And here's the important part. Once something is settled as true and beneficial, behavior just flows naturally. So there's no motivation required. The unique thing about being a human, though, is that we can go back. We can revisit the original statement. We can question whether it's actually true or actually beneficial. But that takes deliberate thought because the brain resists dismantling beliefs it's already built its structure on. That's why discipline always flows out of beliefs. And you don't struggle to live in alignment with what you truly believe. You struggle to live in alignment with what you haven't defined. So now we have to talk about where our beliefs come from. Here's something that most people never realize. As children, we don't choose our beliefs. They're placed in us by friends and screens and parents and teachers and coaches. Not necessarily maliciously, not intentionally, but they are put in us repeatedly. The child's brain doesn't question those statements. It just records them because they are like sponges. And once those beliefs are built early, they become invisible. Most adults aren't actually living by beliefs that they chose. They're living by beliefs that they inherited from somebody else. Then something strange happens. As adults, we consciously will choose goals, but unconsciously we're living by old beliefs. When those two conflict, behavior and performance fails. People will feel like failures. They'll feel anxious. They feel confused, and it's real easy to get depressed over. But the issue isn't effort, it's misalignment. I actually sat down and wrote out all of my beliefs on paper, and I realized some of them directly contradicted the life that I said I wanted. And at that point, I had to make a decision. I either have to give up what I want, when that's not happening, or change what I believed. And that's the trap. And the saddest part is that those parents, teachers, and coaches, they didn't even realize they were doing any of that. So most people don't actually think for themselves. They live out conclusions that were formed for them. As kids, we're taught to respect authority before we're ever taught how to evaluate authority. That's not a flaw, that's just how learning works. But here's the problem with that. When a child sees an authority figure teach one thing but model something different, that child doesn't have the ability to say, that's hypocrisy. Instead, the child just creates meaning. And that meaning takes on the form of a statement. And statements become beliefs. Once the statement exists, the brain automatically looks for reasons that it might be true. Every confirming experience adds another leg to the table. Eventually, the table becomes so stable The belief is treated as settled truth, and a child grows up living out of it without ever realizing where it even came from. That's why most adults don't know what they believe or why they believe it. They never actually chose the belief. They inherited it from somebody else. And this is also why screens can be incredibly dangerous for children. Not because screens are evil, but because they introduce statements faster than a child can question them. Kids don't just watch the content, they absorb meaning from it because they're sponges. Every video, post, or comment carries a message about identity, value, success, relationships, and truth. Those messages arrive as statements. And just like before, the child's brain doesn't evaluate them. It looks for reasons why they might be true. Leg by leg, the table gets built. And if no one interrupts the process, the belief settles. That's why we have to be careful where our solutions come from, especially for kids. If a screen becomes a source of answers, it also becomes the source for beliefs. See the problem there? And once a belief is settled, discipline will not fix it. Character will not override it. And performance can't flourish. When belief formation is protected early, discipline is really easy. Now, if discipline actually works the way that I've been talking about, then this becomes obvious. For discipline to work, you have to understand what beliefs are and where they come from. Motivation always fails. Trying to develop habits also fails because neither one of them addresses the root of the problem. They never address the root. Discipline doesn't create belief, it reflects what you believe. That's why motivation becomes irrelevant once belief is defined, and habits become nothing more than a byproduct of the defined belief. Discipline is something that you decide because beliefs are something that you should decide. You can't discipline yourself out of a belief that you never chose. And here's the uncomfortable truth about it all. If your beliefs are true and beneficial, success becomes surprisingly easy. But if your beliefs are false or harmful, failure becomes just as easy. Not because you didn't try, not because, but because you were perfectly disciplined in the wrong direction. So if all of this is true, and it is, here's the good news. You're not necessarily lazy, and you're probably not broken, and you're not bad at discipline. You are disciplined in alignment with beliefs that you never stop to examine. And once you understand that, discipline makes more sense because discipline isn't something that you force. It's something that flows when belief is clear. Now, if you want more videos like this, consider hitting that like and subscribe button, and I'll see you next time.